Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. It is 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. Before we get started on our topic here, a couple things. Welcome to today's webinar event, of course. We're here to talk about setting up your people in your payroll module, independent contractors and employees. If you've never attended a webinar event, click the little red arrow on the sidebar of your control panel. Webinar control panel minimizes that webinar control panel, gets it out of your way. Or if you've got a dual monitor set up, just drag it off onto your second desktop again, just to get it out of the way. Get the full visual effect of the presentation here. We're going to be together for the next 20 minutes or so. I'm going to wrap up what I'm talking about no later than 20 minutes after. I'll be happy to stick around and answer questions if you have it. We are definitely recording today's webinar event, and we'll put the video out on this on our website, on our support center page here sometime within the next week or two. So you can come back and revisit this if you wish. For those of you that may have the payroll workbooks, this is being taken from our P101 workbook, pages 11 to 23. That's what I'm using as the basis or guide for the event today. If you don't have the workbooks and you're interested in that, you can of course go to the Church Windows website. Here on our home page, go to the beginning menu at the top, and right down here you've got the link called Training Workbooks. All of our workbooks can be purchased there as PDF files and downloaded directly from the Church Windows store. And again, you can do that anytime. We do try to use as much of the workbooks as possible on the webinars. We just find that it really kind of ties everything together for folks. So if you have that workbook, by all means, follow along. Again, if you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar control panel for me. I'll do my best to keep an eye on those. And if I don't get to answer them during the event, I'll certainly be happy to get to them and answer them at the very end. Okay, so here when we open our Church Windows Payroll module, there are two different employee or pay types that we can record in the software. If we go to Data Setup, we notice we've got one here called Employee File and another one called Independent Contractor File. We're going to talk about setting up our contractors first, but frankly, one of the most important things that I think that we need to make, and we make a note of this on page 11, is independent contractors can also be paid through the accounting module, and you can produce a 1099 miscellaneous income from the accounting module for that too. You do not need to enter your contractors in Church Windows Payroll in order to produce a 1099 for them. You can do that through accounting. Okay, we're not going to cover that today, but I'm just saying it is something that you might consider. It's just, we want you to know, okay? So basically, under current IRS regulations, as the workbook points out, independent contractors who've been paid $600 or more during the year should receive a 1099 miscellaneous 1099, and so that's why it's important that payroll be able to support that as it can in accounting. If you're interested in more on that, in terms of what those requirements are, you can find out more about that on the IRS's website. Going to irs.gov, of course. Okay. So to add our independent contractors, we would simply click from our main payroll menu, Data Setup, and Independent Contractor File. Okay. So we have a contractor already in here, Joe Greenthumb. He's our landscaper, lawn maintenance person here. We see here a few things about Joe: his address, city, state, zip, tax ID number, which frequently is Social Security number in many cases for independent contractors. And we also see their pay labels over here on the right-hand side. We can set up to 3 current pay labels for contractors. Okay, those are defined as each contractor is added to the database. So when I click Add at the top here, And I put in, test contractor. Can also enter a name or DBA. So if the name of the contractor is different than the company they're doing business as, you can certainly enter that. You can enter your address information, city, state, and tax ID information, and then simply click OK. Whoops, we need at least one pay label. Sorry, my fault. So general, we got to click on the pay label, and so we're going to call this, they're a noodle maker for us. So we're going to type in noodle maker, and I can type in a pay rate if I wish. Now again, that pay rate is pretty much defined by anything, any frequency you wish. It could be a flat rate, it could be whatever rate you want to classify it as, in terms of whatever it is they're being paid for. You just have to remember to enter whatever that rate is they're being paid or should be appearing on their check. So if that's multiplied by, the rate, then you have to enter that rate as you're paying it to them. This is not an employee who we might set up as hourly, where we go, okay, if I set up my noodle maker with $25, if they work 4 hours and they're paid $25 an hour, it's not going to calculate like an hourly employee. Okay. I could set up additional, like I said, up to additionally 3 different pay labels for an independent contractor. Okay. And those 3 pay labels, if I believe correctly, if I look at it here, can also be linked to 3 separate or different expense accounts in our accounting module as well. Okay. While we're here at the contractor file, I just want to point out we've got these other additional tabs down here at the bottom. So we've got the pay labels, we've got withholdings, totals, and dates paid. Okay. So if we take a look at those under withholding, let me go back to my regular drawing. So here, if we go, okay, if they want us per their W-9 to back up or pay in their federal withholding, we can check that. Also, I can enter an amount to be applied or withheld for state tax too, if asked to do so by the contractor. So I simply put up backup federal withholding. And basically, the withholding is based on the percentage set by statutory federal rates to be withheld. Okay. And again, I can specify an amount for state tax if applicable. Totals will show me totals that were paid for them. Also, how much were withheld for state and federal withholding, and for the year as well as for the quarter. And it will even indicate the dates that the contractor was paid through payroll. Okay. It's pretty nice to have that backup federal withholding and for state withholding too, Just allows them to have you pay in something as part of your tax deposits for them. Just a nice feature. Once we've entered that information for that contractor, we would then click apply or apply and OK. And as it indicates, with our any employee, but it doesn't show us on our contractor file, it will on our employee file. When we go to data setup, account number setup, I now have to click my IC or independent contractor. Here's my test contractor. And yes, per the pay labels that I set up, it will allow me to link those to the different expense accounts. But you got to complete this. Okay? All right, so let's go back to data setup and into employee file. We're on page 13 now of our workbook. So here's my current list of employees, either from the menu or I can scroll through them. Okay. So when I want to add a new employee, I simply click the plus or add button in the upper right corner. It opens up my window and asks me to enter a new employee. So we're going to say, 3 is Emma's going into our music department. So we're going to type in James, tab down Emma. Can enter the, of course, additional address information here, the necessary address information. Again, all taken from their completed W-4 form. folks, you've got to make sure that you get that Social Security information entered in here for them. If not, it could be certainly a problem in terms of coming to produce the W-2s at the end of the year. Let me get that in there right this time. 123-2122. Allows me to record and set up their federal filing status as either single or married. She's single. I can leave the screen open if I want to add more employees. We're not going to, though. So now when we click OK through this, it pops up with our warning that says, please remember to go to the Payroll System Administration menu to account number setup and link the employee for the employee just added. We're going to click OK through that. It now shows Emma's name here in the upper left automatically, okay, right here, as our most recently entered employee. Now, as indicated at the bottom of page 13, we have to look at these various tabs down here across the bottom. So when it opens to the General 1 tab automatically, but this is where we would then select the employee's pay type. So in this case, are they hourly or salaried? Or if they're an employee that's no longer employed by the church, we would enter them as, choose them as, or set them as terminated. Also, what is their pay period or frequency? Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, semi-monthly, or daily or miscellaneous, something different. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and set her as, say, weekly. And then down here at the bottom under our pay rate, we would enter regular. Under standard rates, hours, and pay period, per pay period, we would enter perhaps if there is a default number of hours and a pay rate that she's working, or a salaried person would be there per pay rate based on the pay period that you set up. So for a salaried employee, of course, it would be bi-weekly would be their annual salary divided by 26. Semi-monthly would be their annual salary divided by 24, of course. Or monthly is annual divided by 12. Or weekly, in this case, by 52. So in this case, we're going to say that she works 40 hours a week at $12 an hour. I can set additional or overtime pay, hours worked and pay rate if I wish, or additional. And this is where I would also enter any accumulated values. So rather than awarding an employee, or giving them X number of hours at the outset or contingent on employment, if they earn their vacation or sick time with every passing pay period, I would enter those accumulating values here. Okay. We would click Apply, and then we're going to toggle over to our General 2 tab. So our General 2 tab is where we could also enter alternate address information. There's also miscellaneous information here that we might enter about the employee: date of birth, their job position, what was their hired date or terminated date, when was the late date of their last raise and how much was that, when was their last review, or when is their next review scheduled. And again, these are only available by checking those boxes to key in those dates, okay, or figures. Dates. Further down the list on General 2, we have our emergency contact information. Certainly very important, and would be advised to enter that if applicable. Probably even more so important down here at the bottom is our direct deposit banking information for EFT or direct deposit. So if the employee is opting to be paid electronically, this is where we would check to use direct deposit. We would key in their routing and account number information, the type of an account, and what the EFT detail record and ID individual information is. Okay? So we're going to say Emma is not opting for direct deposit, so we're not going to check that. As indicated at the bottom of page 15 here, it does talk extensively about direct deposit. Our payroll is what is called NACHA compliant. It produces a file that meets federal banking standards that you can upload to your bank They can import that file and folks can be paid electronically. It does also, of course, produce the stubs, the pay stubs for those folks, so you can distribute them in lieu of checks. We're not going to really go into too much detail on that direct deposit. There is a very detailed help topic in our help files on setting up direct deposit. I'm not going to spend any more time on that, folks. We've got some other things to go talk about, and we've only got a few minutes left here. Again, once I've entered that information that I want on my General 2 tab, I'm going to click Apply. We'll toggle to our Federal tab. Here is where, usually, again, typically based on what's information that's taken or entered directly from the employee's W-4, what is their federal filing status, single or married. It's generally going to put that same status on your state tab if state taxes are withheld. Also, it's going to default to wanting to withhold federal taxes based on the federal tax tables. There is also plus an additional amount or percent, so if the employee specifies that, they'd like you to withhold an additional amount or percent above and beyond what the federal tax tables withhold, you may certainly do so. Also, what number of exemptions is the employee opting for based on their, again, W-4? So, we'll say, okay, M is opting for one exemption. And then below that is where, if we check additional amount or percent to be withheld, is where we would enter either the amount or the percent. Okay? Also, is there a retirement plan that the employees having deducted from their pay to be, to show in box 13? When we again click Apply and toggle to our State tab, again, you would want to ensure that you're choosing the proper withholding state. In this case, it does withhold. It does populate with the same as what the church's withholding state is by default, unless you change that. In this case, Ohio does have a single filing status of all. Your state may not. It may have something different. Okay. Similarly, though, it has a use tax tables option and a plus additional amount or percent, as well as a location to enter a number of exemptions if applicable. Okay. And yes, if there is additional or amount or percent to be withheld, deducted from their pay or withheld from their pay for state taxes as well. For those that have it or that it's relevant for, we do have a local tab too here, local taxes. So, if we do have local taxes that are withheld here in the state of Ohio. So yes, I would have to, of course, choose the appropriate one for Emma here as it occurred. So if she is living in Gahanna or working in Gahanna and living, say, in Columbus, she may be subject to 2 different local taxes. I know I am. I live in one city and work in another. So I would choose those, and I can also enter an additional amount to be withheld for local taxes as well. Again, clicking Apply, going to our Deductions tab. So deductions, again, folks, are not withholdings. They are things that generally folks are voluntarily having deducted from their accounts, from their payroll for things like health insurance or pension contributions. So if she said, oh yeah, I want to participate in the health insurance plan, so I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to have, $50 deducted from my pay, or an amount deducted from my pay each pay period to apply to my health insurance. And it does have our year-to-date totals down here as well. Okay. Allowances, while typically being used for like pastors, if they're being paid, like a housing allowance, allowances are also really handy, folks, for people that have, say, regular employees who are being paid for 2 different jobs. Okay. In this case, she doesn't do that, so we're not going to put anything under our allowances tabs. And then finally, on our totals, it does show us what our W-2 941 totals are for both the year and broken down by quarter. Okay. So then once I click Apply and OK through this, again, my final step would be to go back over to System Administration, Account Number Setup, find Emma's record from our list here in the top left. Here's Emma James, and I would need to link her to the appropriate accounts in our accounting module. And that does talk about that on page 21, 22, and 23 of our workbooks. But simply, we click in here, we choose the, drop-down menu, choose the appropriate expense account for, say, their base salary. She's going to be a new musician, so we're going to choose musician salary. Notice it populates for all those. I would need to come in here and choose the expense account that I have set up for my church's portion of Medicare, Social Security, and FICA. Click over under my deductions and, scroll down and choose the appropriate deductions for their liability account for my, say, pension payable or health insurance payable. Okay? Yeah, okay, folks, so it's gone a little bit longer than normal here, about 30 seconds or a minute longer. I'm sorry about that. Let me see what questions we've got. Whoa, we do have a number of them here. So let me see what we've got. Let's start at the edge. If you have a person if you've seen what you came to see, folks, thank you. You can choose the file option and click Exit Leave Webinar. Again, this will be out on our website here sometime in the next couple of weeks or so. If you can't stick around for the questions, thank you so much. All right, let's see what we got here. If you have a person performing two functions, organist, choir director, and is charged two different accounts, can you manage that in here and have it mapped to different accounts? Yes, that's exactly what we were talking about, Pam, here, was, if you've got an employee who does two different job functions, you would set one up, their main job, under their general one, and then we would advise setting up an allowance here, for them here and linking it to an allowance that subsequently can be linked to a different expense account. Yeah, and you don't have to change the pay labels here under General 1. Let's go back to Emma. So here under General 1, notice we've got, regular, overtime, and additional. A lot of folks will change those to whatever another job description is. The problem is regular, overtime, and additional shows up on everybody's pay record, not just the one employee. So when you change the pay labels there, it changes it on everybody. Allowances allow us to customize those. Good question. Next, what does the blinking bar on the our right side of the screen mean? Frankly, that just means it's, Susan, it's just advising us that there is a scroll bar there and a menu, the list, so you might want to, scroll down the list and make sure that you're not missing something on the tab. Good question, too. Yeah, it's just basically saying there's a list here. Just so you're not missing something, you might want to scroll down and look and see what's there. Can you add categories to the deductions? Sure, of course, Barb. You can always add more deductions by going into Data Setup and Deductions file. This is where you would add more deductions. We're not going to get into that. That's not the topic for today. I'm sorry. How do you use allowances for an employee doing two different jobs? I have someone doing two different jobs. Yeah, so again, similar to before, I would go into, I would set up their regular job under the regular pay rates, hours and rates. Then I would go into allowances file here under Data Setup, and we would click Add, and set up a different, allowance here for, say, custodian. So if we had a person who was a part-time custodian for us, I would add the allowance. Let's say Emma did that. Can be completely taxable. Then I would go under Data Setup and Employee File. I would find Emma's name. I would click the Allowances tab. Down here I would say choose my custodian. I could enter the amount, or I can leave it and enter it as I need it. And then when I now go over to System Administration and Account Number Setup, finding Emma's name from our list, I can now click the Allowances tab, and here I can link her to a completely different custodian expense account. Where is that? I know I've got one in here. Custodian salary. And then okay. So I've now linked it to two separate expense accounts for regular pay and then one for the other second job description. If it would help if the reminder to link was prompted at the end of the entry step rather at the beginning. That certainly is reasonable, Diane. Yep, that makes sense. Our payroll module is being rewritten, so that is something that may be changing, and when the payroll rewrite occurs. But grid point, that certainly might be more helpful. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in. Looks like some folks have already kind of left the event. You're very welcome. We hope this event's been helpful. If you have questions for us after the event has concluded, please don't hesitate to contact our support staff, 800-533-5227. And we'll look forward to seeing you folks, hearing from you either through support or helping maybe see you at another future Church Windows webinar event. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar for everybody. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.